Welcome to a very special edition of the S&D Podcast Show, the NFL Draft Special Show. Finally here, Dan.
Finally. Thank you to the Easter Bunny, Rockefeller Center, Radio City Music Hall. Completely flopped. Thank you for making us all wait the extra 2 weeks. Did you think Johnny Manziel farted, or did Danny Clowney took a pee this today? Did you know that? And
I heard Clowney ate cereal.
Did you know Derek Carr has the smallest hands ever as a quarterback? Or Teddy Bridgewater had the worst pro day ever, and that
because he didn't wear gloves.
That his stock went down bajillion points because he had one bad pro day.
Because he didn't wear gloves.
Yeah, all that stuff. Well, hey, the NFL draft is here. We're excited. The Giants are drafting number 12. Me and Steve are gonna have a lot of views on what we should do on number 12. We have a lot of ways that we can go. We can go tackle. We can go tight end. Both they're very good. Maybe a little linebacker or a defensive tackle. So all that with that. We're also gonna have our good friend Chris from the SNDPODCAST.com come in and talk about the Jets while they draft number 16. Right? They draft number 16.
Sounds about right.
They draft in the late rounds of the mid-teens in the this year's first round. So a lot of the Jets can do as well. I would like to see them go offensively, of course, since their defense is so good and they've been lacking on offense the last couple of years. But we haven't had him on our show for a long time. Our good friend, our original friend, Keith Black, to come on and talk about the potential fantasy guys for this year and what his beloved Raiders are going to do with the top 5 pick. Will it be Johnny Football? Will it be Khalil Mack? Will it be God knows who?
Will it be anybody who will help them actually win a game?
It's going to be very interesting to see.
They traded Pryor. How do you not draft a quarterback after you traded the guy who's supposed to be the next quarterback for your team? And
we'll talk to Keith about that. They did have Matt McGloin from Penn State stand out from 2 years ago, starting a bunch of games.
When Pryor got traded, first Eisen podcast after mentioned it, that was the last Al Davis guy. Pryor was the last Al Davis draft pick.
Yes, absolutely.
It wasn't even the real NFL draft. But before we even move forward, first off, tonight's song is for our special, like always. Intermezzo 2, this one is called, by Rob Barden. So Make sure to check him out. But first things first is I would personally, and Dan, I know you are in agreement with me.
Yes.
Like to thank everybody for the month of April and listening to our show. We ended up with, I think it was 3 episodes plus your video blog.
Yeah.
126 total views for a total of $252, plus some nice, generous donations. So we ended up raising a grand total of $352 for autism awareness.
I'm very speechless and honored to say thank you to everybody that did help us out for this wonderful cause. We know, like we mentioned throughout the whole month, that we know a bunch of people that were affected by it, and both of us do have learning disabilities, so we know how it is to be bullied with a disability. So we like to thank everybody that showed up to help us out throughout the whole month for this autism awareness. So thank you for everybody with that. Kudos.
Love you, Mikey.
Yes.
Love buddy Mikey.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So thank you to everybody that helped out and people who did actually donate as on top of listening. So thank you to that as well. So we're going to start it off with Chris coming on, talk a little Jets football on the SNDSportsblog.com. So stay tuned and you'll listen to more Intermezzo 2
by Rob Barden. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the S&D Podcast NFL Draft Special Show. Dan, let's welcome in for the first time from our S&D Sports Blog website, Chris Dordon. What up, Chris?
Hey, Chris. How's it going tonight?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
No problem.
It's going good.
Day on Thursday night?
You bet. It's gonna be something else. I'll tell you.
Finally,
it's finally here. Thanks to the Easter Bunny for messing everything up and flopping, but no pun intended.
Yeah, what are we, 2 weeks late now?
Yeah, a couple weeks late, and all the media and everybody's going nuts now. So, all right. So, what do you think? What do you think the Jets are going to do with their draft pick for the first round this year? There's a lot of holes the Jets would love to fix. I know they shored up a little bit on the defensive end the last couple of years on the draft, and they're one of the top 5 defenses like we know with Rex Ryan as their coach. They need help on the offense. They've gotten nice pieces in the offseason with Chris Johnson to come along with Chris Ivory for a very good running game. They picked up Michael Vick, who's going to push Geno Smith, who had a decent year last year for a rookie. He's going to try to push him for that starting job. And then they got a stud in Eric Decker. I really like Eric Decker. He's one of the most underrated players. He did do awesome with Tebow. Everybody only thinks about him with Peyton Manning. So, if you were the general manager for the New York Jets, who would you pick for your first round draft pick?
If he's there, if I'm John and Dick, I go with, honestly, Brandon Cooks, Oregon State. Basically, he's this year's version of Tavon Austin. He's quick, he's small, he's got the hands, he's got the speed. He's got a 40 time at 4.33. It's almost, one of the better times that's ever been recorded. If he's not there, I would honestly probably go cornerback. We lost Cromartie this year. He went out to out west, and they need to replace him. Kyle Wilson's not a starting cornerback.
Absolutely,
he's maybe the third guy, but going with that, I would go with Denard out of Michigan State. Darqueze Denard.
Yeah, Steve gets
put up some solid numbers.
Go to Michigan. Michigan
put
State.
Up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about him.
Yep.
Not funny. It's not funny. He's a scary guy.
Yeah. I think Kuiper's got Denard at number 1. So I mean, for cornerbacks available in the draft. So if he's there, I would jump on him.
Absolutely. That would be nice to get back-to-back first-round draft picks on cornerbacks. Very rare to do. But honestly, would be very awesome to see, especially potential of Dean Milner, who actually did step it up towards the end of last season. I know he was a little rusty because of the injuries last year, but he really stepped into his own towards the end of the year, and it's really going to be amazing to see if they do get 2 back-to-back cornerbacks in the first round. That would be definitely interesting and kind of like rare to do. Like you said with Crooks, he is pretty solid. He could be a little bit better version of Jeremy Curley. Curley is that nice slot guy when he is able to play on the field. So maybe we get Cooks. He can go on. He'll do a little end of rounds maybe, especially with Geno Smith and Michael Vick as their quarterback. The Jets team can be very explosive with that. And maybe with Curley, with Decker, and I know this is a big-time bust, but maybe one of these years Stephen Hill shows up and becomes one of a caliber player that they drafted him in the first round. It's kind of scary that the Jets passed up on Alshon Jeffrey for Stephen Hill, which I'm sorry to hurt you on that one, but that really hurts.
It does. It stings.
That really does.
It stings.
But
it's
like, are you excited for the Jets this season? What's your take on the New York Jets? What else do they have to get in the rest of the draft for them to be even more competitive and be a playoff team, maybe a wild card team? Since we know the Patriots are always going to win the division. I know it hates to say.
As long as Brady is there.
As long as Brady is healthy.
Brady and Belichick.
Yeah. So, what else do you want to see other than Cooks and Denard for those chances to be on the Jets when the Jets pick in the late teens this year?
I think they need to shore up their offensive line. Usually the line is very strong for them with Mangold at center. You got the Brigishaw Ferguson. Well, I think ever since Damian Woody retired, they really have lacked the aggressiveness that they had when they had the line. They had an all-pro line for a long time. And the right tackle position's always been a weak spot. That's something that they need to address. Maybe, later on in the pick. We have 12 picks this year. Over the first 5 years of Rex Ryan, they've had 13 total. So I think with the amount of picks they have, there's no way that they don't address the offensive line. If anything, I could even see them packaging some of those picks together, maybe move up, try and get somebody who is, projected top 5 or maybe even top 10. They could, jump up some spots. But other than offensive line, I think the other place that they need to address would be safety. They got Antonio Allen, but they needed another guy. When Ed Reed came in, like you said, that's when Milner really took off. I really do feel like he learned a lot. Just, Reed was there for 4 weeks, 5 weeks, but I think that really did a lot for Milner. He was definitely it was almost like watching a different player the last quarter of the year. It was impressive the way that he just turned it on. So, I'd love to see Ed Reed back, but he's washed up.
Yeah, unfortunately, Ed Reed is washed.
He's getting up there. The other thing is, I think they need to address the tight end position. Yes, they have Jeff Cumberland, but they don't have anybody else.
Cumby. Yeah, Cumby did have a nice, respectable season, but the Jets definitely need to get a tight end also in the draft. There, other than Eric Ebron, I also did a lot of research on Ebron, but there's also a lot of players like Troy Nicholas out of Notre Dame and a few other players in the draft for tight ends that would be just as respectable, and putting him with Cumberland would definitely solidify that spot. So the Jets could easily get a couple guys in the second and third round. There's Chase Amaro, like I said, Troy Nicholas, just to name two right now. So, the Jets have 12 picks, like you mentioned before. It's really going to be interesting to see. The Jets do have room to make trades to move up or down, depending on which way they would like to go. Because most teams only have 7 picks since there's only 7 rounds. But that's what happens when you get trade Revis and do other smart trades and dealing. Isaac has done a really good job. And he knew last year was kind of like a rebuilding year. So he stockpiled for next year just to get ready for this year. The offense is, I wouldn't say 100 times better because that's a stretch, but they definitely gotten at least 50% better. And I know Chris Johnson is not what Chris Johnson was when he rushed for 2,000 yards, but he is the most durable back in the league the last couple of years. So maybe that's because of his offensive line. I don't know. But the Jets really help improve the offense. So I would love to see them get an automatic starter.
Do you think, Chris, they screwed Sanchez themselves, or was it just Sanchez just decline?
This is what I think. I think that Mark Sanchez, his first 2 years, was put in a position where the players that they had around him led him to be able to be successful. He had Thomas Jones as a running back. He had Leon Washington. He had, Braylon Edwards and Santonio Holmes for wide receivers. 2009 and 2010 were, obviously, they had the back-to-back championship games. 2011, they didn't really, I think, put him in a great situation. There was just, they finished 8-8 that year, but I just think that Sanchez kind of was coddled. I think he wasn't ready to be the guy who would make the team be successful. He had, he probably had the best defense that any team has put onto the field in a decade in that 2009 and 2010 season there, those 2 years. He didn't really have to do much in order to be successful. They weren't letting up points. He didn't have to put up 30, 35 points a game in order to win. But as, the bad contracts started to affect the salary cap, and when Tannenbaum was let go, I think it was a fresh start. But I don't think that Sanchez was really given a fair shot with the team last year with the whole debacle when he was put in the Giants game and he got hurt. But hopefully, personally, I don't really hate the guy. I think that he deserves to, get a shot somewhere else. Hopefully he's successful somewhere else. But I think he wore out his welcome in New York, to be honest with you.
I can see it. I just also felt like I agree with the running back situation 100%.
100%. But honestly, I think I would also have to blame Tannenbaum and Rex Ryan on that what was the offense coordinator? Schottenheimer, for not helping the growth. Yep. And I kind of blame the owner for going after Tim Tebow just for PSLs. Honestly, the minute that happened, there was a big controversy, and he didn't get to grow.
Absolutely.
And honestly, if Rex Ryan didn't play him in the fourth quarter of a meaningless Giants-Jets preseason game where the third string, the guy that made the hit didn't even make the Giants roster. And that just goes to show you that was just stupidity on Rex Ryan's fault. I'm not saying they would have made the playoffs with Mark Sanchez as a quarterback for the first few weeks, but that definitely stung the growth of Geno Smith a little bit. Geno Smith was the most erratic player in the whole league last year. I follow fantasy football a lot, and the fantasy experts were saying he was the most up and down player because he'll go 1 week he'll score like 25 points, and the next week he'll score none, and that was just a prototypical rookie kind of thing. But I think he's going to be better this year, especially with Michael Vick being either behind him or take it. But the Jets really have to be delicate with this situation because they don't want another Mark Sanchez on their hands. So
exactly,
the Jets really need to be delicate with that. I think Geno Smith's a little bit more headstrong than Mark Sanchez. Don't get me wrong with that, but not by much. So I don't know. I really don't like how the front office of Mark Sanchez handling was very poorly done. If you had to ask me, he was 8-8. His worst year was 8-8, and it wasn't just him. It was just a bunch of things. So I don't know. I'm still one of the few remaining Mark Sanchez supporters because it would have been interesting to see what he actually was able to do with a full team. So I don't know with that.
Right. I think it also lends you to think of the way that Marty Morningweg calls a game, whether his strength, because he's always been good with, the short pass and the play action, and Morningweg's a West Coast guy, West Coast offense. It's an offense that Sanchez ran in USC, and he had a lot of success with that. So part of me is kind of on a what if about last year, because the other thing that Sanchez has always done well is he's gone into New England and he's played well. And looking back on it with hindsight, that New England game in week 2 was the difference between making the playoffs and going home.
Yeah, absolutely. They had a bunch of late season collapses. I know it's 3 seasons ago, and I'm not bringing it up because I'm a Giant fan, but the Jets had the Giants. If it wasn't for a 99-yard touchdown, that's not Mark Sanchez's fault. There was a lot of gaps, assignments blown by the whole team. For some reason, the team didn't have it that year. I think it was just them being tired of being back-to-back NFC Championship games, and then the Jets got impatient, which that's the problem with this league this year. If you don't come through for 1 year, they look to axe you, and that's the problem with today's NFL. I firmly believe.
Oh yeah.
What's your theory on Rex?
Absolutely. I love him. I've always been a Rex guy. I'm so happy that they brought him back because I really do think that he's the right guy for this team, and I do think that not necessarily this year, but within the next, say, 3-4 years, he will be the guy that brings this team back to the Super Bowl. Whether or not they can win it or not, we'll see then. But the players love him. There's no denying that. It's just he's just awesome. I'm 100% a Rex Ryan supporter. I always have been. Never wavered there. I was so excited when they got him, and I mean when they brought him in, that was the whole reason that they got a couple of guys like Bart Scott.
Absolutely.
Because they had him in Baltimore, and they love. He's just a player's coach, and that's another reason why Ed Reed came in last year because he wanted to play for Rex Ryan.
100%.
That's a huge thing.
100% right on that. All right, well, let's go back to the draft. If you were at Radio City Music Hall Thursday night, if there was one player the Jets, if they do pick, and who would you be upset if the Jets reached to go get, or a player that you didn't expect the Jets to get? What player would you be mad if the Jets were to the draft instead of a particular player that we mentioned about before?
I think that I would be mad if the Jets traded down.
Okay.
And I think I would be a little bit more upset, say, if they reached for one of those tight end guys that, say, Ebron gets taken. I've seen some mock drafts where he's been taken to 12 by the Giants. I've seen some drafts where he's been taken by, Baltimore. If they get one of those second or third tier tight end guys for the first round pick, like you said, what's his face, Jason Morrow, Austin Safarian Jenkins, a couple of guys like that. I think those are second, third round picks that if they, reached on them, I wouldn't be really happy with that.
I can see that. Like you mentioned, the guy from North Carolina, Dan mentioned to me yesterday. It's actually a big group of Giants fan. Is from New Jersey.
He's from Newark, New Jersey. I read that in the New York Post on Tuesday morning. I was like, really? I knew he moved to North Carolina. That's why it makes sense that he went to North Carolina. But I had no idea he came from New Jersey. So if he comes to the Jets or the Giants, it would definitely be a good thing. But if he falls down to the Jets, I'm going to be really upset. I'm going to be really upset because that's like a Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers type of fall, because he's been slotted to go anywhere from 8 to the Jets. So it's really going to be interesting. It really is going to be interesting to see what the common trend is for the teams before the Jets and Giants on which players go, because teams are going to panic and pick a player because another team went with the similar position. That's just how things go sometimes. So it's really going to be interesting. I would like to see the Jets get one of those tight ends like we said in the mid rounds. I would absolutely be happy with that, 100%.
Oh yeah, definitely. Need a guy who's going to, complement Jeff Cumberland, because Cumberland he's a good down the field guy. He's a good pass catcher. They need a guy who can, be maybe a little bit more of a big body, but also somebody who can, outrun a linebacker when they need to. Linebackers are getting faster and faster. You need to be able to match their speed with your speed. So it's definitely something that they have to look into.
Alrighty. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit away from the Jets. We're going to talk a little top 5 picks. You're sitting in Houston right now. Who's going number 1, Chris?
Number 1, I would have to say, is going to be Clowney. I think you can see the precedent that they set when they picked Demario Williams over Reggie Bush. I think it's going to be the same thing. Clowney's a generational defensive lineman. I mean, this guy is he's unreal. He's a monster. I don't think there's any way that they pass him up with the first pick.
Okay, and I know you mentioned in your article the stretch pick. If you're the Rams, do you take Sammy Watkins?
No, with Sammy Watkins, I've heard a couple of different things. I heard that Detroit might actually try and trade up for him and snag him. And could you imagine Detroit having Calvin Johnson and Sammy Watkins?
Let's not do that. I know we reassured our secondary.
Yeah, I saw that in a bunch of mock drafts. Like either Dan Jeremiah's 15th mock draft or Bucky Brooks' mock draft.
Yeah. Other than that, I think that the Rams, they really do need to go with offensive line. I could see them going with Greg Robinson. They let up so many sacks last year. There was Sam Bradford had no chances at all to throw the ball last year, and they really do need to shore up their line.
Yeah, absolutely. That's been the rumor. They've been going with Sammy Watkins, one of the best Matthews, the offensive tackle, which is number 1 on the charts for majority of the guys on the offensive line. So it could go anywhere. Who do you think will go with the number 3 pick?
Number 3 is a toss-up. I could see the Jags, they go with a quarterback, whether it's, Manziel or Bortles or whoever. I could definitely see them going quarterback. But Khalil Mack will still be on the board, and he's the linebacker you're talking about from Buffalo. And it's going to be really tough for anybody to turn down a guy like that. It's difference between drafting for need and drafting the best player available. If he's there, I would probably go best player available, and I would jump on him.
Absolutely 100%. The biggest question of all, where does Johnny Manziel go?
Johnny Manziel is one of those guys. You just have no idea what teams are thinking about him because everybody has such fluctuating opinions. Yeah, he's going to be the next Tebow. No, he's not. He's going to be a great quarterback. He impressed them pro day, which, means nothing, but they seem to put stock into that. I could see him going with Cleveland. If he drops, I could see maybe Minnesota. If he can make it down to the 8th pick, I could see maybe even with Tampa Bay with the situation that they have with Freeman, and they kind of have patchwork quarterback situation going on right now. You never know. It's just there's no exact science for this. Nobody knows better than you guys.
Is Manziel going to be a bust?
I think if he's put in the right situation, he'll be successful. But the right situation is such a rare thing to find. I think he may be one of those guys who's maybe 2-3 years in the league, and then he goes to Canada.
Wow, that's a pretty bold statement. I like we mentioned before with Johnny Manziel, he's just that ticking time bomb. He's just that ticking time bomb right now. He's that ticking time bomb. Everybody wants to pick him, but they're scared of the off the field issues. Him partying with Drake,
right?
Him partying with Des Bryant this weekend.
Well, he's going to the Cowboys. He's partying with Des Bryant. It's automatic.
Yeah, Cowboy fans are pretty funny about that.
The Cowboys are going to trade Tony Romo for the 4th pick and draft Johnny Manziel.
Oh my God, that would be the most epic Jerry Jones move ever.
And then the joke is going to be on the Cowboys because Tony Romo would take the Cleveland Browns to a Super Bowl.
That would be pretty epic. I would laugh so hard. I'd be the biggest Cleveland Brown fan. Because
I couldn't even hate him if that happened.
What? Oh,
I couldn't even hate him if that happened.
Honestly, I know it's rare for me since I'm a Giant fan. I mentioned this a billion times, but I have nothing but respect for Tony Romo. It's not Tony Romo that makes a lot of those mistakes. Yeah, he has moments where he has clusters, but for the most part, they don't have a defense to stop anybody. Period. They gave up DeMarcus Ware, just to name a few players that they, even with the worst defense in the league. So it's just really funny that the Cowboy Tony Romo is the lightning rod for that team, even though there's more bigger issues than Tony Romo.
The thing in the NFL is it's always on the quarterback.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at the Texans.
The kicker misses the game-winning field goal, and it's automatically the quarterback's fault.
Well, if they threw that one touchdown in the first minute of the second quarter on that 30-yard pass,
Yeah, exactly. The game would have been different.
SND Sports Blog. What's the 2 Twitter names, Chris?
I'm at 12fives and at JT's Helmet Hair.
That's a funny name. All right, Chris. Thank you for coming on. I can't wait to have you on a lot during football season. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. It's been great.
No problem. Keep up the good work. All right.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome, guys.
Welcome back to the S&D podcast. You just listened to Intermezzo by Rob Barden, tonight's song for tonight's NFL draft preview. We have our good friend, big-time Oakland Raider fan from the East Coast, which is not really rare since they are one of those teams that travel all around the world. Keith Black, they're drafting number 5 again. How excited are you for drafting top 5 once again?
Well, they traded out last year. I'm pretty excited. I think... I think they should get a difference maker on either side of the ball. They can really kind of get somebody that might make a difference, whether it's this year or in the future. I know you're going to ask me who I want, and it's tough. I still think that quarterback is a major issue. They did trade for Matt Schaub, but I think he's more of a stopgap. And there are a couple quarterbacks in this class that I think that you can draft early and have him sit on the bench for even a year and sort of get ready. I would love to have Johnny Football, but it's looking more and more like he might not even be there at 5, which is kind of crazy because I thought going into the draft there was no way he wouldn't be there at 5. There's obviously no Andrew Luck or even an RG3 this year, but I think they will come out of the draft in the first half of the draft with a quarterback, whether it's Johnny Football or whether even a guy like Teddy Bridgewater falls to the second round, which would be a miracle. But we'll see. They'll get a difference maker, I'm pretty sure.
Absolutely, but with if they were to get Johnny Football, that he is that prototypical Raider.
Yeah, I mean he definitely has the Raider attitude,
and they're missing that too.
Yeah, and they haven't had it in a long, long time, and he's sort of, I really like him. I know that his measurables are sort of more comparable to Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson obviously won the Super Bowl, but he's more of the exception than the rule at his size. You're talking 5'11", but he's extremely accurate. He works hard, and he's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I think he still feels like he's got quite a bit to prove, and I think he would come in and work hard. And if they're convinced he'll come in, he'll work hard. He'll take some keys from Matt Schaub and learn a few things, sit on the bench for a year, learn the game, come to practice every day, go to the workouts and work hard. I think he could be really good, and I think he does have a chance if he falls to the right spot. I think it's hard in the draft for a quarterback because most teams that are looking to draft a quarterback are not necessarily in the best position. A team like in the top 5, you're looking at the Jags, who probably are desperate for quarterback help. The Browns, who have always been desperate for quarterback help, and this year's no exception. A lot of people seem to think Manziel will go there, but I think that they'll wind up with somebody good. It might be Khalil Mack, and it might be someone on the offensive line. I doubt Robinson falls, but there'll be a couple of decent players, whether it's Lewan or Matthews. At 5, they'll have a nice little selection of players, and I don't doubt that they'll also try and trade down like they did last year.
Okay, you mentioned a bunch of key players that were talked to be top 5 players or top 10 players for that fact. Other than Manziel, who would you, out of that group that you just mentioned, who would you like to see wear silver and black?
Well, I'd like to see Jadeveon Clowney wear silver and black. That's not going to happen. He's going to go 1, I think, and that seems to be the consensus. I would really like to see if they can get Khalil Mack. Dennis Allen is a defensive coach. They've drafted a lot of it for defense. DJ Hayden last year wasn't exactly everything they hoped he would be, but he's still young, and he's corner is sort of hard to adjust to at the pro level. I'd really like to see them get Khalil Mack. Other than that, I see a lot of people think they're going to go wide receiver, and I think that's the wrong move. But Watkins might be a very special talent. They probably won't have to reach for Mike Evans. If Watkins isn't there, I can't see them taking a wide receiver, but you never know. It's the Raiders, and it's Reggie McKenzie, and they'll fall in love with somebody. And I'm sure they have someone on their board that they want, and they don't care how anybody else ranks them. They're going to take them if they can get them. Realistically, I feel like it's going to be Khalil Mack if he's there.
Do you believe the hype that he is the future, the modern-day Lawrence Taylor? Minus the crack, of course.
Well, I believe that he comes from not a good conference. A lot of times these feel like they have a lot to prove. His workout results were absolutely insane. So he can be really good, but it's really hard to judge. I know the Jets drafted Golston, and they thought he would be, just this beast coming off the line, exploding off the line. He turned into nothing. They traded up to get him. I I feel like Mac can be really good, and he would have a chance to be tutored by Lamar Woodley and be taken sort of under that wing and learn really how to play linebacker in the NFL. You always have to consider that it's going to be an adjustment. Very rarely does a guy come in right away and make a huge difference, except for, at the quarterback position, a guy like Andrew Luck or a guy like RG3. But I think that he could be really good. His measurables are all there. The question is sort of whether he has the willingness to put in the work. A lot of these guys come into the league and they don't. And that's sort of why I like a guy like Johnny Football, who I know I feel like is going to come in and really put in the work.
Absolutely. It's gonna be interesting to see with Player Mac. There hasn't been a player in the Mac League to come in and be a top 5 pick. From everything we've seen, he is like you mentioned, he's a physical specimen. He is a freak of nature, and he's actually trying. Like you mentioned, Golston before. Like Golston took plays off. He had a bad grading. All the scouts said who were doing mock drafts and everything at that draft that if he tries all the time, he would be a stud. But he has that factor to be a complete bust, and sure enough, he's never gotten a sack in the NFL. And he's probably out of the NFL. And we've had that issue with Aaron Curry, name a few, Rolando McClain for the Oakland Raiders, not to mention a few players. Those players were in the spotlight their whole college career. So it might be a little different factor that Khalil Mack came from not that big of a known college league that it took everybody surprised. He absolutely dominated the Ohio State game this year. Granted, he was the only one doing anything because it was Buffalo versus Ohio State, one of the powerhouses in the whole country. So, with that being said, other than that, he's had good game tape. I've seen his highlights. He seems to have it kind of thing. It just can he bring it to the table for 16 games in the highest level of things, which a lot of players from the Pac-12 and Big Ten and SEC already know it because they played it already in college. So with Khalil Mack, it's a little bit of a risk, but if he's so high reward if he hits, absolutely.
Right. And that's why they have all these interviews and all that kind of thing. That's why a lot of the stuff that we don't see, the 40s, we'll see the 40 time, we'll see the shuffle time, we'll see how many times he can lift, do the bench press, but we don't see the interviews. We don't really see how he interacts with people. We don't really see, was he at the gym at Buffalo every day working hard to get better, or was he, just hanging around and relying on natural talent? And a lot of times this matters, and I'm not saying that he was doing anything wrong or anything bad. We don't know, right? So it really relies on your scouting team and how much you trust your personnel team to make a good decision on a guy and make a decision on a guy that's going to fit and is going to work out.
All right. Other than the 5th pick, where other spots would you like to see the Oakland Raiders go and fix for next season to come up?
Yeah.
For the opening game against the Jets week 1.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see them, obviously, I mentioned quarterback. I think they will go quarterback. They lost a few guys on the defensive side of the ball. They signed Tuck and they signed Woodley. They still need some help there, and Dennis Allen still with the team. He is a defensive coach, and I think he's going to try and build the defense that he wants. He hasn't really done a ton to get that done. They didn't really have a lot of picks his first year, so it's not really totally fair. But I would imagine that they'll go heavy on the defensive side of the ball and sort of trust themselves to sort of cobble together everything else on the offensive side of the ball. Just because I think that the team feels if they're going to succeed, they're going to succeed on defense. And you saw it with their free agency, and you saw it with, they let their best running back last year go. And they're sort of going to just try and piece it together on the offensive end. And they're just going to try and stop teams from scoring. And when you're in a division with an offense like Denver's, and you're in a division with, Phillip Rivers and Jamal Charles, these are teams that they have to play 6 times a year. And they don't want to get in a shootout with any of these teams. They want to try and hold them to as few points as possible and win these sort of ugly 17-14 kind of games. And I think that's what they're going to try and do. It's not going to be a pretty season, but I think, you got to sort of react to what everybody else in your division's doing, and you're not going to get a quarterback like Peyton Manning in this draft. You're not going to put together an offense like that. You're not going to have a weapon like Jamal Charles. But if you can neutralize that, hopefully you can win some games.
Absolutely. Who was the Raiders' leading receiver last year?
Receiver last year?
Yes.
Should have been Rod Streeter, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay. I take your word for that.
Yeah, they had. That's. I mean, they're sort of, their wide receiver position is a little bit weird. They don't have a number one. I feel like they have a bunch of guys that could be like number 2 and 3, and they're sort of, they have like 4 or 5 guys, I feel like, that are sort of in that range. I think they could piece it together, but we'll see. I'm hopeful that they can. They're obviously going to try and do it on the rushing end, and it was Rod Streeter. He had 888 yards last year, was their leading. But they let Rashad Jennings go, who was their leading rusher.
Now on the Giants.
Yeah.
We're very happy about that. Can you tell us a little bit more about Jennings, since Jennings hasn't really been that go-to guy, and the Giants are relying on him to be that guy this year? Can you give us a little?
Yeah, I mean, he came from Jacksonville, where there were like a couple of weeks there in fantasy where he was sort of when Jones-Drew went down, and he didn't really do that much with Jacksonville, but he came in and he got a lot of opportunities, and he converted touchdowns in. He had 4 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. He sort of really came on, and he ran pretty well. He only had 163 attempts, less than 1,000 yards, but 4.5 yards per carry. If you could sustain that in 6 touchdowns, that's a good season. I think he'll be good. I don't think he's necessarily, if you're hoping to win the Super Bowl, I don't know that he necessarily needs to be getting, 100 to 300 carries or anything like that. Of course not. But he's a decent guy to have. He can do some stuff out of the backfield receiving. Not a whole lot, but he's not terrible out of the backfield either. And he's sort of, you'd bring him in for more of a change of pace. And he was good last year. He was really good last year, especially when McFadden went down. I think they'll miss him. They're going to try and the Raiders will miss him. They'll try and piece it together with Jones-Drew and McFadden, but they're just going to hope to get 16 healthy games out of the 2 of them, and go from there.
All right, so you kind of transferred out of the Raiders. You mentioned that Clowney will probably go number 1.
Mm-hmm.
If there's one of these top quarterbacks that are still there at 32 when Texans pick again, which one will it be, and will they take him?
Yeah, I think they will. I think they will take a quarterback. I don't know if it'll be that soon. They have some real issues at the quarterback position. But if there was an Andrew Luck here, if there was an RG3 here, they would take him. I think that they're hoping that a guy, either Bridgewater or Bortles, falls that far. Maybe Jimmy Garoppolo from Eastern Illinois, and he's sort of gotten a lot of hype recently. Some were even saying late first round. But I could see Garoppolo going to Houston, and I think they will take somebody in this draft, whether it's in the 2nd or the 3rd round. They could go with like a McCarron or something like that. Really, McCarron will probably be in the 3rd or 4th round. I think they'll take someone, but I don't think it'll be a guy that they're going to say, yep, this is our guy moving forward. It's a guy that they say if he looks the best in camp, maybe we'll throw him out there, but maybe not.
Okay, I definitely would like to see McCarron get drafted. Somewhere in the second or third round.
Yeah, I think he will.
I think he'll be a decent quarterback. He'll be like a nice game manager, what Alex Smith is now.
Yeah,
with a little less of the running game, of course, compared to let's see who would be another good managing coordinator. Yeah, Alex Smith would be the best one, I guess, right now. I think he has it all together. He knows how to win. And he's a very competitive guy, which we've seen with him winning 2 championships, actually being on the field for 2, and being a backup for the other one. So he's won 3 championships. So that's nothing to lash an eye at.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be a sleeper in this year's draft. I really think whoever ends up drafting him is going to be able to bench him the first year, maybe year and a half, and they'll strike gold with him.
And if it doesn't work out, he still has his wife.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the advantage of getting a quarterback in this draft. I don't think that there's really anybody who you're saying, no matter who they get drafted by, they have to be the starter year one, right? Even if you're the first team to take a quarterback, you're not necessarily bound to start him in year one, because there is no guy that is like the clearly this guy is going to be a great quarterback kind of guy out there. There just isn't. So,
the only way I can see that happening is the first team picking a quarterback in the first round, possibly, and starting him right away. Would probably be Jacksonville.
Yeah, I mean they have real issues. I kind of thought I know some people say, they'll take Manziel and sell some tickets, but they didn't go after Tebow, and they could have gotten Tebow for nothing and sold some tickets also. He's super popular down there, but they didn't. So I don't know that teams necessarily think like that. They're going to consider a quarterback at 3. It remains to be seen if they'll take one. I don't think that there's necessarily a guy they might necessarily believe is the future, especially if he has to come in and start week 1. But, they need somebody because Gabbard is not going to work.
Well, Gabbert's in San Francisco.
Oh, right. Well, they still have Henny, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And Denard Robinson.
The secret weapon. Yeah.
Come on, if Clowney goes number 1 and Denard Robinson's the starting quarterback, how bad could that be?
Yeah.
What happened a couple years ago.
It wasn't him got hit. But...
I know it wasn't him, but I'm sure he still has the nightmares.
Anyway, all right, let's give you the biggest question in the first round of the draft. And I've mentioned it in our earlier segment with Chris. Why is Teddy Bridgewater fall so much in the last few months? And he was originally the quarterback at the start of the college football season, and then he had one bad pro day, and everybody just had a bad taste in their mouth. And it's just very weird because the tape doesn't lie, and he's had obviously a great college career for Louisville, a couple of BCS games, and the rest. What do you think? What do you think the issue is with Teddy Bridgewater and why everybody hates him?
I honestly don't know. I mean, I saw somebody tweet.
It's weird.
I saw someone tweet a while ago. He didn't get worse at playing football since the season. Since the season ended. The tape is still there. It's not like he showed up and he was 400 pounds or anything at his pro day. I think people put a lot of stock in these pro days. But for your guys' reference, Todd McShay said Jamarcus Russell had the best pro day he's ever seen.
Exactly. And so it goes on with Blake Gabbert and on and on.
Right. And, Johnny Football, who I love, had a great pro day. He was doing well. But, these just because a guy had one bad day throwing the football does not erase his entire college career. I mean, and I don't know why he's falling. Maybe they're seeing something in the interviews that they don't necessarily like. I could see that being the case, but I wouldn't have any information on that.
I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, of course.
Because nothing else really makes sense.
Yeah, it's just one of those weird stories. I guess this year, since it's been 2 extra weeks, Like he would probably just been one of those Aaron Rodgers, Beatty Coyne, Geno Smith kind of stories. But we have the extra 2 weeks, and Twitter and Instagram. Twitter has exploded the last couple of years since that draft. So maybe that's what's really going on.
Yeah, they're looking for, Johnny Manziel has been linked to almost every team in the first round at one point. They're looking for these storylines, but the Teddy Bridgewater thing sounds real. That he's really falling, and it doesn't really make sense to me. I think if you wind up with him in the second round, I think that if the Texans land him in the second round, I think they'd be thrilled with that.
Absolutely.
Getting
2 perennial, what could have been 2 first round, number 1 picks in the drafts.
Exactly. I mean, if you're the Texans and you're coming out of your first 2 rounds and you've got Bridgewater and Clowney, you really can't have envisioned your draft going much better than that through 2 rounds.
Absolutely. I agree 100% with you on that.
All right, Keith. Got any articles you want to?
Well, I mean, I know it's not football, but I just wrote something for numberfire.com on Kevin Garnett. It's up there. If you go to numberfire.com, you can search for me in their authors, Keith Black, but it's actually the top story right now. So it's right on the front page.
Good because he did score 0 points tonight. So.
Yeah, well, I wrote about how he had, this was it. He's done. And, how his numbers from last year, his numbers this past year are so much worse than even just the year before, and 2012, 2013, he basically came close to matching his career numbers, but this year he's just way off of that pace, and that it's not looking like he's going to be rejuvenated anytime soon, and I think they might get swept out of this round, but so it's up there.
I can see it too. All right, before we leave, I know it's the football preview, but we know you're a big Knick fan. Mark Jackson or Steve Kerr to be the new quote-unquote savior of the New York Knickerbockers? Yeah,
I mean, I'd love it. I'd love to get Mark Jackson. I wrote this in our Number Fire author's email thread that I would love to get Mark Jackson if he got fired. It turns out he was fired when we're recording this on Tuesday. I mean, he's proven. I wouldn't mind Kerr, only because it seems like Phil Jackson and Steve Kerr will be on the same page, and to have your president GM on the same page with your coach is a real. I mean, that's a real thing. Like that needs to happen. They need to be on the same page. But I mean, Jackson is proven. The players all seem to like him. The ownership in Golden State, for whatever reason, did not like him. There are some rumors about why that might have been the case that are unconfirmed. Basically, that the owner didn't like Mark Jackson getting all the credit for turning the team around because the owner spent $500 million on the team. But whatever
it's all
the reason,
the owner. It's all the owner.
And they haven't made the playoffs in almost 7
years.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll just say that Simmons had Rick Bucher, who covers the beat for Golden State, on his podcast, and Simmons basically said that it seemed like the owner was not happy with that Mark Jackson was getting all the credit after the owner dropped all the money on Bogut and Iguodala, and he was unhappy that Jackson was getting all the credit, and Rick Bucher did not deny it. So, that doesn't mean that it's true, but it doesn't mean it's not true either. So who knows? I would love to see him in New York. Maybe he could get Melo to play defense. Who knows?
Well, if you check out our site, SND Sports Blog, I actually wrote an article on my coaches who I think would be a good fit. And, of course, instead of really saying why Jackson would be a good fit, I actually bashed basically Golden State for not liking him. But
yeah, but that's just supposed to show you how bad that organization is.
Yeah.
Like the whole team. You normally you can get a mutiny out of this. But
I mean, Curry wanted him there. Curry made it clear that he wanted him there, and Curry is the most underpaid, maybe not superstar, but definitely franchise player in the league. And Curry said he wants him there, and they did not oblige. And I do not imagine that when his free agency comes up, that Stephen Curry will be wearing a Golden State uniform.
Well, they may be changing the name because they're moving in more into San Francisco, I think.
Oh, would they be the San Francisco Warriors?
I believe so, because they're moving arenas.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the report is that they're actually going to change to the San Francisco.
Yeah, good for them.
But, hey.
Don't really.
And then, by the way, Klay Thompson may be one of the most underrated players in the league.
Yeah. So I'm not sure that that many of those guys will be there in a little bit, but we'll see.
J.R. Smith, Melo's rights. Every future draft pick the Knicks have for Curry and Thompson.
And
I'd love to have Curry.
Too.
And Barnarni.
Yeah.
And Felton, because we won't need him anymore.
Yeah, well.
And we get David Lee also back.
Yeah. I don't think that'll happen.
All right, Keith.
Thanks, Keith.
Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
Thanks, Keith.
Bye.
Welcome back to the SND Podcast Show. You just listened to Intermezzo by Rob Barden. Intermezzo 2.
Yeah,
I apologize.
don't forget number 2.
Intermezzo 2.
Number 2.
So, Giants. NFL draft.
Picking number 12.
Is this the earliest we've picked since Eli?
Yes. Has been.
I was going to say Shockey, but then I realized Eli came after.
Yeah, 2 years after. Giants, we all know, they can go to all different ways. I would love to see them go offense, since John Mara at the end of the offseason, first press conference meeting of the offseason, the offense was fractured, and they fired, didn't technically fire Gilbride, but we all know it was a thank you for everything you do, but you're fired kind of thing, but we won't say you got fired. So I would love to see them go offense.
He didn't get fired. He retired.
He retired, but we all know the real reasoning to that. But that's beside the point. So I get my ears perk up when I hear the owner of the team saying the offense was broken last year. We know that Eli had a rough season. The offensive line wasn't so great, other than Justin Pugh, who was our first round pick last year. Other than Victor Cruz, Ruben Randle had his moments, but what I've read in the beat writers' reports with the Giants and the mini camps seemed like the Bob McAdoo offensive style is going to be a lot easier to pick up than what Gilbride's was. So that might help out Ruben Randle and Jarrell Jernigan in that realm of things.
I just want them to play like they've been playing, especially Randle.
Yes, but Randle has had moments of brain farting, and we've known that since most of the interceptions last year came on throwing to Ruben Randle. I know that's
It's all Eli's fault. Every one of them.
I know it's overrated, but it's something to be alarmed about. But the Giants need a bunch of positions. They need a tight end. Brendan Myers, who had an awful season with us last year, he did not return. We also need holes for the offensive line because Kevin Booth is gone. A bunch of others have gone. We also have a couple of holes in the defensive line, like I mentioned, and of course a few receiving holes. So at the number 12 pick, it really depends on how the draft's going at this point. I've seen a bunch of scenarios that the Giants could get Eric Ebron from North Carolina, who's an absolute stud, who would be like a Vernon Davis type of player, which we all know, and that could be a great pick for the Giants down the line to open up the middle of the field. He can break it at any point of the field and open up the field for Victor Cruz.
Mm-hmm. Victor
Cruz got double team last year because Akeem Nicks couldn't get open last year, and no one was scared of Akeem.
Couldn't move.
And if Victor Cruz didn't get laid out with 2 weeks left in the season, he would have had another 1,000-yard season. So, got to give that in effect.
Pretty much by, I think it was 2 yards, I think, something
yeah,
like that.
he was really, I still consider him a 1,000-yard receiver because if he played the last 2 games, he would have gotten it with no problem. But that's beside the point. Here's my final 4. If you read my article, I would look...
998, by the way.
What?
73 for 998.
Exactly. 2 yards shy of 1,000 yards. Eli hung him out to dry on that. Plain and simple. But I would love to see them get Eric Ebron, like I mentioned. He would open up the field. He just seems like the can't miss. The question is, will he be there for the Giants to pick at 12? There's a bunch of other teams that need a tight end as well that would love to take him. So it's really interesting to see if he's still there. If he's still there, Giants are going to take him no matter what. if he's gone and there's a few offensive tackles still on the board, most likely Taylor Lewan. You can talk about him as well. You're a Michigan man. And Zach Martin, who I'm a Notre Dame fan, I know a lot about. Both guys that could really step in and start on the offense right away. Both guys played their whole careers from the minute they were freshmen on the offensive line. Martin played guard and tackle for the last 2 seasons. He's broke the Notre Dame record in starts in a career.
Right.
That's important to know. Taylor Lewan, he's a stud. We know that. He beasted it on the Columbine, and I've watched tape on him. He's a beast. He's able to do it. The only thing I'm scared about is his off-the-field issues. He's gotten into a couple incidents after the season this year, which kind of red flag, but hopefully it's just him being a stupid 21-year-old and keep it at bay after that, especially being in the New York City area where a lot of temptation can happen. What do you think the Giants could do? I named good 3 players right there that I would love to see the Giants go offensively for the first round.
Sign Beeson.
Yeah, we re-signed Beeson.
We'll probably take defensive ends, defensive linemen later in the draft.
Yep.
Because we always find those
breaks.
If you give Jerry Reese any credit, he knows how to draft defensive linemen.
Yes, absolutely.
And you're never afraid to lose one because of the way he drafts them.
Absolutely.
We signed defensive backs.
Yes, that's the first time that position is the strongest part of the field. Honestly, with the Giants, I really, if Ebron's not there at number 12 for the Giants, it's okay. Granted, it would suck to have him not be on the Giants, but there are plenty other tight ends in the draft later in the rounds, like Troy Nicholas, just a bunch of other players that that would be able to step right in right away. Just happens that Ebron is a rare breed. So with that being said, I wouldn't mind having Troy Nicholas, who's actually a better blocker. It's just a deep in tight end. So if Ebron's not there, it's not the end of the world. It would suck, but not the end of the world, because that means we can either get Zach Martin or Taylor Lewan. If we were to go defensively, I hope what's his face from Pittsburgh, the defensive tackle from Pittsburgh is there. He's pretty studly as well. If it wasn't for Jadeveon Clowney, he actually was the best tackle out there, the best defensive lineman this season. So he won a bunch of awards for that. Every defensive lineman award this year did go to him. So you got to give him credit on that. The only problem, the knock on him, is that he's very small, and it's just really rough right now. It's Aaron Donald, by the way, from Pittsburgh. I forgot to mention his name. He's very small. A lot of people compared him to Geno Atkins, which is a very good thing to be. Geno Atkins is a stud when healthy, and he was a focal point of the Cincinnati Bengals defense before he got hurt last year. So those 4 players, you can't go wrong. What do you think, Steve?
You got it right. I mean, can't really. I trust Jerry.
I trust Jerry. Jerry's had a little rough the last couple of years. Let's be fair. I think Jerry makes it right this draft.
I think it's a big draft for Jerry.
It's a very huge draft for Jerry. This is a turning point in the Giants organization, and it's going to be very interesting to see where the Giants draft at number 12 will be the focal point for the rest of the draft. And maybe we can get an offense lineman a little bit later on in the draft. But if we get Taylor Lewan or Zach Martin, we'll have all-pro tackle or guard, whichever position Martin would play, or tackle for Lewan. The biggest question is, what would happen if Will Beatty is healthy? Did you put Will Beatty into right guard? But we put a lot of money in Will Beatty.
Isn't Puig an inside guy?
Pugh is an inside guy.
So what? So we move him in.
Yes. No, that's no question about that. It's all interchangeable. Who's going to be the left and right guard? I mean, right tackle. I apologize.
We've seen Beatty struggle a lot.
Yeah, he did not earn his money this year.
And I don't even think he ever earned it. That's the thing.
No, he didn't, and it was more of the potential what he can bring. He's had his moments of being good. I'll give him that, but last year he did not earn his contract. The one everlasting memory of last season was when Jared Allen sacked Eli with Will Beatty on him. It was a Will Beatty sandwich.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember that. And it was disgusting. And, of course, I thought again, why did we pay this guy?
Yeah, exactly. He's had a rough year. Maybe we move him to right tackle It's a little bit lesser and not Eli's blindside.
I feel like teams actually put less, not as great of their defensive ends on that side.
Yeah.
For most guys, because most guys, that's not their blind side.
Exactly.
You want the better player on the blind side because you know they're going to get the numbers.
Absolutely.
So, I would move Beatty over. Lewin showed that he is a left tackle.
Oh, absolutely, 100%. He'll be an all-pro tackle for years to come if he stays out of trouble, which he can.
Yeah.
Listening to interviews, he definitely can.
I agree with it. As long as he stays, like you said, out of trouble and healthy.
Yeah. And if we get Aaron Donald, I'll be happy as well. We have a nice rotation right now. Hankins did play pretty decently. He just didn't have room to play with Linval and Colin Jenkins and all the other defensive tackles that we had. We would have Colin Jenkins and Hankins and have what's-his-face, Donald. So, honestly, I don't know why I'm forgetting Aaron Donald's name, but I really, he would be my number 4 on the top 4 list if we were to get him. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed my article. It was a lot better.
Check it out, SNDPODCAST.com.
Yeah, I'll have an article coming up after all the 7 draft picks that the Giants have this year. I'm really excited to see what happens. I just hope we get one of those 4 guys, and I'll be happy. And I'll probably give it a B+ or an A+. Just hopefully we get all the other positions that we've been lacking the last couple years. I think now that all the free agents are going, everything like that, the free agents are able to... The Super Bowl free agencies, all those guys that were dead weight the last couple of seasons are finally gone. I'm sad to see Justin Tuck and a few others gone, but it had to happen. So, here on out...
Like License Plate Guy said,
it's a new era.
We'll have Tuck on in 10 years with us, and he'll tell us how bad of a decision it was.
Yeah, exactly. So, go Giants. We're gonna listen to more Intermezzo too, and we'll be right back.
Welcome back to the S&D Podcast Show. This is our NFL Draft Special Show. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Keith. Awesome time with both of them. Dan, great job on the Giants, like always.
You. Same to you. I know I've been studying real hard. I've been listening to a lot of Giants podcasts and reading up on it. Obviously, I would be doing it anyway, so I'm enjoying it. I hope one of those 4 guys, like I mentioned in the article, is there when the Giants pick. I will be ecstatic for any of those 4 guys. That being said, it's going to be interesting to see what the Jets do. The Jets tend to be conservative with Izek, so it's going to be really interesting to see. With the Raiders, you never know with the Raiders. They can be the laughingstock of the league, or people will be shocked about it. So, honestly, let's see what happens with those teams. It's going to be interesting to see what the first 5 picks are going to be, where Johnny Manziel is going to be, where Teddy Bridgewater is going to be. So, honestly, this draft could be really awesome or a flame out like they've been saying since it's lasted the last 2 weeks.
The Texans will judge how this draft goes.
Yes.
With their first pick. And they won't even say who they're picking.
And I think it's going to be Jadeveon Clowney, unless they go the home run pick with Johnny Manziel, but I don't see that because he's too much of a risk.
I think
Clowney's more of the home run guy, the safer of the 2 picks.
I like Clowney, and I think Clowney and Watt on each end is pretty dangerous,
especially against Luck for the next decade and a half versus 2 times a year. So hey, that's going to be awesome to see if that's the case. And they also pick at 33.
Right.
So they also get the first pick in the second round, which they can get one of those lesser-named quarterbacks that they could groom into maybe some point during the season. Not have to start him right away unless he just goes off in preseason like Geno Smith did. I'm excited. I'm really excited. Who's gonna be your sleeper this year for the first round?
I think it's going to end up being Bridgewater.
I think it's going to be Bridgewater too. It has the makings, like we mentioned in the spot with Keith. Is maybe it's because we've had different 2 extra weeks that we normally don't have this whole stock going up and down, and all the experts having 300 and something mock drafts, which is crazy. So it's finally here, draft season, and enjoy. I hope your team picks the right players that you'd like. I know I'm really shooting for it. Giants really need it this year after a very bad underperforming season last year. So go Giants. Thank you for listening. Once again, thank you again for everybody that helped us with the autism awareness fundraiser that we had. So, once again, don't forget to check out SNDSportsblog.com and stay tuned to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram for big upcoming news that we are promoting on our social media sites.
Yes, and don't forget SNDSportsblog.com. Check it out. Major changes coming next Monday. So make sure to pay attention. Yes.
So thanks again. Have a great time. Enjoy the draft, and
we'll see you next week, guys.